Hello, everyone. It's time for team training for the Oklahoma Housing Needs Assessment. And today we're going to look at our ArcGIS software. And this lesson is entitled Navigating ArcMap. So this is a very kind of basic video. So if you're already familiar with ArcGIS, this may be review for you. You may want to skip ahead to one of the other lessons. But if you're new to the program, this will help you learn how to navigate and get around one of the basic modules of ArcGIS called ArcMap. Now, this is all part of our sort of prototyping model flowchart, and in some other lessons, we've looked at the boundary data, the shape files that are used to create maps, and where you can get those. We also looked at how to get data from the Census Bureau and other sources, and bring it into the GIS software. And that's what we're going to discuss today, and then really in the next few lessons. So let's get started. I'm going to switch my share here over to ArcMap. And you should be able to see that now. That is your sort of home screen. So if you go to ArcGIS, and there are various versions. So I'm actually using something called ArcGIS 10.8, which is what the university provides me. There's ArcGIS Pro, there's a web version, and actually I think Esri, the company that makes ArcGIS, is sort of moving to a completely web-based model in the future. But for now, you might be using any of these, and there may be some differences in some of the way the screens look, maybe where some of the commands are, but it really doesn't matter. I'm going to cover some basic things about ArcMap that will work for any of the different versions. At least I hope so. Okay. So for this exercise, I'm using some data that I got. There's a book I like that when I teach GIS, I usually use, called Getting to Know ArcGIS Desktop. And again, there's different versions of this for different versions of ArcGIS, right? And so I actually think this book I'm using was for like 10.2 or 10.4, but it doesn't really matter. I'm really just using it because it has some data files that come with it that we can use for exploring the interface. And, let's get started here looking at the interface. And so you can see, like many programs, there's a menu tree up here on the top. And if you open up these, you will see many of the same commands that you might find elsewhere in other programs. So, if you go to File, you can open a new file, you can open an existing one, you can save files, you can print, you can export, you go to Edit, there's copy, cut, and paste sorts of things, right? So you can access these. And then there's also an extensive set of icon-based menus, and I have several of them open here. And to get to those, you can go to Customize and hit Toolbar here, and you can turn on and off different toolbars. And you see there's many of them here, and we'll be using several of them. But for the most part, for this lesson, it's mostly basic commands anyway. Now, you can see here that below the menu and command bar, there is a bunch, there are really a couple of main windows here. One is the table of contents that shows the different layers of data that we're going to be using. And you'll see up here, there's several small icons. There's different ways to display the table of contents, and we'll go into that as we go along. But just for now, in this lesson, we're mainly just going to use the list by drawing order. And when you do that, it shows the different layers, and it puts them in the order on the screen. It arranges them in the order that you have them. So we basically have 4 different feature classes here, and these are all shape files in this case, which means vector data. And we have a flight path, countries, cities, and a lat long. And so starting from the bottom, the lat long is what cartographers call the graticule, right? It's the latitude and longitude lines on the map. And so this half of the screen, or this 3/4 of the screen, is devoted to showing your map display. And we're looking in data view here at a world map. And so these blue lines are the graticule. Now, we also have some country layers, which show the countries of the world. These are polygon layers, right? So you should be, I think most of us are familiar looking at a world map. And it's also worth pointing out here, looking at the countries and the graticule, that this is an equal area representation of the world. And so you can see all the lat longitude lines form squares. They have the same area. And what that causes to happen is it causes distortion in the shape of the countries and in their sizes, okay? And so like you can see Antarctica down here it looks huge, right? But it's really only a little bit bigger than Antarctica. It's just because it's close to the pole, it's all unwrapped here and stretched out. Same thing with Greenland, and you can see some of these islands here are kind of squashed and stretched out. When you get near the equator, things are more close to the way we're used to seeing them displayed. We also have the flight path layer, which is a polyline layer, and that's showing here this yellow line. And this particular set of data that we're looking at it shows the flight path of Amelia Earhart, who was an early aviator who tried to circumnavigate the globe and unfortunately didn't make it, right? But it shows her flight path and the countries she flew over. And then we have another layer that is turned off right now. So you can see that there's this little checkbox here. You can turn it on and off. And, if we turn the cities back on, then you say, well, listen, Sean, you turned them on, but I don't see anything, right? And it's like, yeah, I guess you're right. And that's because of the draw order here. So if I can just click on the cities layer, pull it up, drop it down here, and now the cities will appear on top of the line because they're the highest layer. And you say, well, I still can't really see those too well, Sean. So, up here, we have kind of your basic navigation bar for the data view. And so like if we want to zoom in, we can click and zoom in. We can also hit the little minus sign and click and zoom out. Apparently, I'm in the middle of the ocean now. I'm going to go back out here. If I want to see the full extent of the map, I can just click back here. Now, I can also use my little my little zoom in box here to draw a window. So like I click and hold it down, and then I can zoom in. So here you can see the United States, and you can see we can change the symbology here because it's kind of, these cities are kind of small for me to see, right? And so I'm just gonna make them a little bit bolder, so we can change the symbol. There we go. Now you can kind of see them a lot clearer. And we can do basic operations just by clicking on the symbology here. Like maybe I want to change the color of the outlines of the countries, or I want to change the way the flight path looks and that sort of thing. So you have control over these things. We can also change some of the basic properties. If I double click here on cities, it'll bring up the layer properties. If I go to general, I can change the name, like, I want to change this to cities that Earhart visited. It doesn't change any of the data or anything, but it just changes the name of the layer. And so, you can do this. Now, these are all pretty easy to understand, but sometimes you get data that is coded in a bunch of numbers or symbols and things, and it's easy to forget what you got. Now, we also, going back up here to the navigation bar, we have like this blue arrow, so we can go back to the previous extent or go forward. This is handy to flip back and forth. You can zoom a fixed amount of going out, fixed amount of going in. There's the pan tool here, which I call the Michael Jackson tool. So it's like the white glove. You can move up and down and navigate. So this is very common to most software that has a graphic interface. I'm sure this is not really anything new to you, but it can take a little practice, to navigate if you're not used to the interface, right? And so I'm using my little, another thing you can do if you have a mouse that has a wheel on it, you can zoom in and out with that. And like a lot of times I'll just leave the pan tool on, and then I can pan and zoom simultaneously. It's really a handy way to get around. Okay. Another thing we can do is we can turn on the labels here. So if we right click on cities that Earhart visited and say label features, and you can say, oh, it turns on the label. So she started in Oakland. Her first flight was to Tucson, then to New Orleans, Miami, San Juan, etc. And we can also query these things. So like this little blue dot here with the eye on it is the identify tool. And let's say I want to find out, here's San Juan. I'll click on that. And when you click on that, it says, okay, here is object number 4. It's in the country of Puerto Rico. It's San Juan. Yes, it is the capital of Puerto Rico. It has an elevation of 36 feet above sea level. It's it has 1,700 millimeters of rain every year. Earhart arrived on this date and departed on this date, right? And so there's information attached. It's not just dots, there's information attached. And if I right click on this, I can open the attribute table and it will show the values of all of the different records. And so every one of these points is given a unique object ID. And this, I'm sure this looks very similar kind of to a Excel spreadsheet, right? And then it lists different fields of data, right? So the columns are fields or attributes, like country, name, capital, etc. And then the rows, okay, which you can select over here are the different records of each dot, right? So get accustomed to looking at the map and then looking at the attribute table that comes with it. All right, close that, go back to our map here. If we hit the extents, we'll go back to the extents of the world. All right, now let's zoom in on North Africa here. Look at a different part of the map. And you can use your pan tool to follow the path. And we'll go over here to the Pacific. And you can see here that the path ends in Papua New Guinea, the city called Leh or Lai. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce that. And, her flight continued out over the Pacific where she and her navigator were lost. And so we're not seeing that. So we're going to have to add some data here. And to add data, you go up to this little symbol here that has a little black cross and the yellow records symbol. And then it opens up a dialog box. And you say, okay, well, what are we looking for? Now, I have all of this data stored on my C drive, and it's under a GTK ArcGIS, and so I know where to go get this. And then you look inside the data folder, and then you can see, oh well, there's shape files and there's layer files, and more about those in a minute. Yeah, I can select those and I can add them one at a time, or I can add them all at once. I'm just going to add them all for right now. And so there you can see here we have a layer file. And if I turn the layer file off, okay, for the diverging flight paths, what you will see is you got 2 lines out here. That is the flight diverge layer and the flight path layer. And we can turn those off as well. And those are the shape files. So the shape files don't save any symbology. If I bring them in, they just come in as the default lines, right? So, if you want to see saved attributes, we can look at the layer file. And so you can bring in a shape file, give it some attributes, and then save it as a layer file. And so here you can see she had a planned flight path, this gray dotted line, and then this was what people think would happen, how far she got off of course there. And we can right click on diverging flight layers there and zoom to layer, and it'll zoom us in close to that those flight paths, that layer. Now, another tool, I don't really use this too much, but some people I think love this, and that is there's a little magnifying tool up here on the toolbar, and you can go window magnifier, and it opens up. It's kind of I think it's kind of hard to navigate here, but it opens up a little window, and you can magnify what you're looking at here. So this is the end of this flight path here. You can see that little cursor. So if I put it right on there, and then I can change the magnification, it doesn't really look all that different because you're just looking at the end of the line here. But if we go over here, you can zoom in on the city of Leh, right? And you can look at this. So, it can be handy. It can save you zooming in and out a lot if you're looking at some detail of a map. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about bookmarks and creating and saving views. So we can zoom in here. If we zoom in on the end of this, you'll see there's a little tiny island here. This is Howland Island. This is where she was planning to land and refuel. And we can go to bookmarks here up on the menu bar and say, okay, create a bookmark called Howland Island. And then that will be saved. And so like if I zoom out to my full extent again, or if I zoom in here, now I want to go back to Howland Island, I can just go up to bookmarks, and then it's saved, and boom, it takes me right back to Howland Island. So this is a handy tool, again, to save you zooming in and out a lot. And then let's zoom out a little bit so we can see the end of both flight paths here. I guess I was really zoomed in there. So here, I'm going to zoom back to this layer. There we go. We'll zoom into these two. And so like, if I want to know, well, how far off course do they think she ended up? We can take this little measure tool. And if you ever use Google Earth, this is really kind of similar to that. And so I'm just going to draw from the Howland Island to where they think that they ended up. And then if you click there, you can see it's stretching out 478 miles off course. Well, that is a long way. And you can see it keeps rubber banding, right? So you can keep adding segments. So you got to double click if you want to just stop with one segment, right? All right. So I want to end here by talking a little bit more about the attribute tables. And, we already kind of looked at the attribute table for the cities. I'm going to open that back up again. And, to help you navigate things, it kind of works like Excel. So like if you put your cursor on one of these columns, you can stretch it out. You can make it bigger and little. Again, this is very similar to what we do in Excel. You can right click on a column, it'll select the whole column. If I right click it again, I can say, oh, I want to sort ascending, right? So now it puts all the records in alphabetical order, or you can sort descending, all that sort of thing. You can also get some basic descriptive statistics. So like if I want to know that, the statistics for the elevation of all the cities, we can go here to right click and go to statistics, and so now I got a problem here. I got 1 point selected, right? So I'm gonna have to unselect that, and I do that by going up here to the little drop down arrow and saying clear selection. And now let's try it again here and get the statistics. And so you can see there are 28 stops, and the lowest was at sea level 0, and the maximum was at 1,045 meters above sea level. It gives you the mean, 168, the standard deviation, that sort of thing. And so it can be handy when you're just wanting to look at some of the data quickly. Now we can put them back into sort of their rank order. And like if we select one of them, like here's New Orleans, okay, then you see, well, that's selected. And if I'm trying to minimize this. I'm just going to close it down. And if I zoom out, you can see here that New Orleans is still selected. It shows up as this little cyan dot. Now, hold on, I still got that area tool. I got to get the zoom tool. And so you can see it's very handy. You can select things in the table. It will show up in the map view. If I open it back up, I can hold the shift key down. Like let's say I want Miami 2. I'll click on that one. Hold on, control key, the control key, then they're both selected. Move that out of the way. And you see now they both show up as selected. And it works the other way around too. If I were to select them on the screen, then they'll show up in the, selected in the attribute table. All right. And then I'm just going to back clear those off. So that sort of wraps up the, kind of the basic things you need to know to navigate. There's always a lot of different ways to do things, different whistles and bells in these programs, but that should be enough to get you kind of started with this. And so in the next lesson, I'm going to talk a little bit about another aspect of navigating ArcGIS, which is using the Arc catalog.